The jump scare precon is all about overwhelming your opponents in value and teaches you the incredibly important skill of playing sneaky in Commander. Our commander for this deck is Zimone Mystery Unraveler. She reads, whenever a land you control enters Manifest Dread, if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent you control face up. Remembering, people, that when we manifest Dread means that we're going to look at the top 2 cards of our library. One of these cards will go down as a face down 2/2 creature, and then the other card will go into the graveyard. Because Zamone is a engine for manifest Dread, when we play this deck, we want to make sure that we get Zamone onto the battlefield as quickly as possible. So we are making sure that we have enough mana, lands, or card draw in our opening hand so that we get to play Zamone as quickly as possible so that we can start manifesting Dread as quickly as possible. So let's imagine that we have Zimone on the battlefield and we put a land into play, so we have to manifest Dread. We're going to look at the top 2 cards. We have a Worldspine Worm and a Reality Shift. Now I'm going to ask you, which card do we put into the graveyard and which card do we put as the 2/2 creature on the battlefield? We're going to take the Worldspine Worm and we're going to put this onto the battlefield as a 2/2 creature, and the Reality Shift will enter the graveyard. Let's imagine that we manifest Dread again. We're going to look at an Ash Barrens, this land, and then we're also going to look at this Azuri's Predation. What we need to make sure is that when we are manifesting Dread, we are putting permanence into play. There is no point in putting this card onto the battlefield as a 2/2 creature because we cannot flip this over. So this will go into the graveyard, and because this is a permanent, at least we have the opportunity to flip this face up if we put 2 lands into play. Here we have a Myriad Landscape, Terramorphic Expanse, and Explosive Vegetation. And I want everyone to keep these cards in mind because these cards by themselves put 2 lands into play. Keeping in mind that when we put 2 lands into play, we get to turn a permanent we control face up. Saving cards like this to flip over your giant cards like this Worldspine Worm or some of the other really powerful cards inside this deck is going to have a massive impact on the game. Don't just play these cards out thinking, oh, I just got to put lands into play and that's cool. Use these cards in particular to set up explosive plays. For example, let's say that I manifest Dread and we have that Worldspine Worm onto the battlefield. And let's say that we have this Myriad Landscape on the battlefield as well. Let's imagine that somebody goes to wipe the board. In response to them casting the board wipe, we can tap 2 mana to tap this Myriad Landscape and sacrifice it to then put 2 lands into play. We can put those 2 lands into play tapped, which is going to trigger Zamone so that in response to the board wipe, we get to flip this creature, which was and is a Worldspine Worm. And because this creature dies, we're going to create 3 5/5 green worm creature tokens with trample. Now that the board wipe has been resolved, we lost our Worldspine Worm. This is actually going to get shuffled back into our deck. But now we're left on the battlefield with 3 5/5 worms, which means that because the board has been wiped during our next turn, we're going to be able to hit somebody for 15 trample damage. Now, there are some very powerful cards inside this deck, but these are the ones that I want you guys to focus on. We have a Wilderness Reclamation here and a Shriekwood Devourer. Each of these cards allow you to untap all of the lands you control. This one says all the lands you control at the beginning of your end step, and this one says that you untap lands as you attack with your creatures, where X is the greatest power among those creatures. Now, the reason that this is important is we have to keep in mind that with our commander, we get to turn our 2/2 creatures that are face down, face up at any time for its mana cost. So if we have a giant creature on the battlefield like an AC, or if we have a Shriekword Devourer on the battlefield that costs 7 mana generally, we're gonna have so many lands in play that when we do plays like this where we're able to untap everything, it's what really allows us and gives us the fuel to be able to flip these creatures over during our opponent's turn. We generally want to be flipping our creatures over when we can at instant speed in response to things. We don't want to really be flipping them over for no reason. And when we end our turn and have all of our lands untapped, that essentially doubles our mana and gives us the fuel necessary so that we can essentially play the deck. These cards are incredibly important. And over here, we also have AC and Tatyova, and these cards are fantastic because whenever a land enters the battlefield for us, we get to draw a card, which is, I mean, I think we understand that's just really good. And in one of the first precon I ever had was a Marin of Clan Nel Toth precon, and that precon is definitely not as strong as the one that we have over here today, but I can tell you from experience that I have won so many games of Magic and Pathbreaker Ibex, but that's besides the point. But inside that precon, alongside the Pathbreaker, was a fantastic card. We had an Overwhelming Stampede, and Overwhelming Stampede just says creatures you control gain trample and X+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. This just means that if I have a ton of Manifest Dread creatures on the battlefield, or whatever creatures on the battlefield, let's say that the Shriekword Devourer is the highest power we have, they all gain 7 power and trample, and I attack someone and hit someone for 40, 50 damage. This card right here, we don't want to play. The only time we're casting this spell, everybody, is if we're going to knock someone out of the game. Now, in our final tip, I always recommend the same thing. You guys have to play test your commander deck, which means that you're shuffling up your deck, you're going to draw 7, and you're going to imagine that you're playing against a group of people or somebody. By doing this, it gives you the ability to see how the cards interact with one another, so that when you go play against people, you already have an understanding of how the deck plays, which means your turns are going to be shorter. You'll know what's going on over here so that you can focus on what your opponents are doing, so that you can actually have fun playing Magic. I mean, there's nothing fun about sitting down and just watching other people play and playing cards just to play cards. So if you're watching this, you need to understand that this is a deck that I would rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult deck to play. I would say this is about a 6 or a 7. It's not too difficult, it's very straightforward. What's going to differentiate you from the beginning of you playing this versus when you have a really good understanding of how to play this deck is the timing in which you flip over your Manifest Dread creatures in responses to your opponent's plays. And the only way you're going to be able to generate that skill is by playing against your friends. But you could also work on that skill by pretending that you're playing against people so that you develop those lines inside your brain. And then when you sit down, you don't really have to think about it. You already know what you're doing. If you guys like videos like this, you can subscribe, because every time they release a new precon set, I do videos just like this. And because you guys support these videos so much with liking, commenting, and subscribing on these videos, it almost forces me to make these videos. And if it brings happiness to your life, it definitely brings happiness to my life. So I genuinely appreciate it. I want to thank all of you for being here. This is the last Duskmourn. After this one, I have finished all of my guides for all the Duskmourn precons, so that you guys can go onto the channel and find the other videos should you choose. And I got a couple of other things that I have work on over here that I think they're going to be pretty fun. We're going to be building a room tribal commander deck, which I think is going to be cool. We're going to get that on the channel as well. And if you guys have any recommendations or suggestions for videos that you would like to see, you let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking about starting a series where I play against people inside the Discord, and I'm going to be using in a 1v1 setting, I should mention, and I'm going to be using the arch enemy cards against my opponents in a 1v1 setting, and we'll call it like a final boss battle. But I want to use it as an opportunity to just show the people that we have in our community to the rest of the community, so that people can learn about some of the amazing people that we have over there in the Discord. And I think it'd just be really fun for everyone. Keep in mind, everybody, that we also do have the OG Cup. We're looking to get a group of people inside the Discord. I mean, honestly, we have enough people right now to run another tournament. We're running the OG Cup through Spell Table now. So for those of you who don't know what the OG Cup is, it's our 1v1 commander tournament, in which when a commander wins the OG Cup, they receive a medal. If a commander receives 3 medal, they are banned into a legendary status. And in a couple years, we'll have a group of commanders that are considered legendary that people can look at and say, wow, these are probably some of the best commanders in the format. People don't come in too hot playing these tournaments. So if you have a pre-con, you're more than welcome to compete in the OG Cup. You'll have a good chance of winning because it's in a 1v1 setting, okay? Always remember, everybody, thank you for listening to me, okay? Always remember, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, all right? And most importantly, you gotta remember to believe in yourself. And keep in mind that when we're talking about eating healthy, it's not about removing bad foods from your diet. It's about adding good foods to your diet. Think about it, like your stomach is only so big. So if I add more good foods to my stomach, that leaves less space for foods that would be considered bad. And when we say bad, we mean foods that cause inflammation. So things like dairy cause inflammation, things like grains cause inflammation, and the more inflammation that we have inside of our body, the more difficult it is for our system or our small intestines to absorb nutrients from the foods that we consume, which is going to make us feel tired, which is going to make us feel lethargic, which is going to affect our emotional space, which could affect our head space. So drinking things like apple cider vinegar, consuming apple cider vinegar gummies, and drinking ginger, boiling ginger water and drinking that are things that can greatly reduce the amount of inflammation that we have in our gut that accumulates over the course of our life, so that we can digest foods in a manner that is healthy, so that we can feel healthy, live healthy, and have enough energy to go to the gym for 5 minutes, okay? Peace out, everybody. Everyone that's a part of this community is inviting all the subscribers on this YouTube channel to compete in this channel's tournament series, the OG Cup.
Another day, another victory for the OG.
Our 1v1 EDH tournament series is now going to be held on Spell Table and broadcast live on this YouTube channel via the Discord. So if you would like to represent your country and become known around the world as an OG Cup champion, you can join the Discord in the link below and test your skills against some of the amazing players we have in this community.